Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome back to the P-LotPodcast. John here, joined once again by Michael. We are the one podcast that does not need a 35-man committee to find a co-host like the New York Jets are
Wow.
running right now to find their
hmm
next head coach. And right now, the top two candidates are Rex Ryan and Riverboat Ron Rivera.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Some nice summary of where the Jets are at currently as an
Yeah, pretty
organization.
much. I mean, I wasn't going to go the ayahuasca route with the intro.
No,
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 no.
no.
I'm taking the high road. Well, maybe the low road, but the less lower of the two roads, I suppose.
hmm
So yeah, man, it's 2025, and this is the show where we make our bold predictions for the year. And we don't really have a whole lot going on. Baseball hot stove is, I
Cold.
mean, old again.
Yeah.
Um, we got obviously the Flyers are, you know, they're in the middle of it. We're not even halfway through the NHL season. Not even a third or almost don't even touch almost like a third of the way through. I don't think
Mm.
either. And then we
No,
got
yeah.
the NBA, Sixers.
They were hot. They dropped a
Tough
couple in a
couple
row.
games, man. Tough couple games. Podcast P is
It's
offense is not there yet, and
no, it's not.
it's funny because I mentioned Podcast P is Paul George, by the way. We mentioned you sent that thing over to me about the Thunder rebuild and how they would have just let Hinkie just do the Sixers rebuild. That maybe the Sixers could be in the same position, would have been in the same position the Thunder are in right now.
Yeah,
Um,
because it's
let's
totally.
talk about that real quick because there's not.
When
I
you look
mean,
at
there's,
where the Thunder are at, they didn't draft Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. They traded for him with Paul George. Funny enough,
I
sending
mean,
him.
that's also probably, bro, one of the worst trades in sports history.
Well, listen, you make that trade, which ended up being your star, but everything else you've acquired over the years, are your, your draft picks, guys, like, and just young assets, Lou Dort, Jalen Williams. You sign a guy like Hartenstein in the offseason, you poach Isaiah Joe from the Sixers, and he's like your seventh man off the bench that can reliably knock
Chet,
down threes consistently. Chet Holmgren, your own draft pick, who is really, really damn good, just injured at the moment. Like the Sixers, Sam Hinkie never got to see his vision fully realized. And when you force out the GM for the Colangelos and maybe eventually Elton Brand, like you just went from I don't know. Like you had Embiid, then you drafted Simmons, and you drafted Fultz, and obviously Simmons and Fultz did not turn into what we had hoped or what anybody expected them to turn out to. No one thought neither of those guys would be, you know, stars at this point in their career. Um, but you got rid of the guy that just had the vision fully. And once it got to the point where you drafted Simmons and Simmons was in like year 2 or 3, Fultz was only a rookie, still disappointing. The whole shoulder thing was a headache, but he was just getting started, and your new motive was to go star hunting. And that was certainly like a direct result of not having Hinkie, like just forcing the issue, which was you know, trading Saric and Covington for Jimmy Butler, and then trading even more assets to go get Tobias Harris that first year when they ended up, first, not the first, but the year they lost to Toronto. And it was like, I'm not saying, oh, you should just kept Saric and Covington and ran that into the ground or whatever, but it's kind of like Hinkie maybe holds on to that for the more perfect piece, for the better piece than what Jimmy Butler was or what Tobias Harris was. You really wait it out and wait for your perfect time to strike. There's no reason to, you make more creative trades along the way. But it's like once Joel didn't even play a game yet under Sam Hinkie, and it was just like, I don't know. He never gave him a chance to create more assets in a way that he was probably creative enough to do as opposed to what ended up transpiring. And that's just frustrating because the Thunder, everyone was making jokes. Oh, the Thunder keep trading for these third graders because the first round draft picks were so far in the future. But now they have one of the best teams in the NBA, along with plenty of assets still there if they want to go make a push to go get a higher level talent player, but at this point, they're already one of the best teams in the league. They can still kind of sit on those and wait to use them to patch holes as opposed to an upgrade at the
Well, I
moment.
think the knock on Hinkie, though, I think versus maybe the Thunder, is that the Thunder just are nailing a lot of their draft picks.
Mhm.
Like, dude, like Jaleel Okafor.
Right, but it's just like, I
Even
granted,
to
you started tanking.
even a certain to a certain extent, like Dario Saric, like we like
I hear
Dario when
you.
he was here, but he's just like, what is he even doing right now, man?
Well, he
He's on
got
the
hurt a handful of
he's on,
times. Is he in Golden State?
he's on the Nuggets,
Nuggets?
and
He was on Golden State last year.
yeah, I'm not
I
like
hear you.
trying to say Hinkie was this like on one hand, like I think what hurt Sam Hinkie to a certain extent is that he was never like he was great at kind of making a lot of the moves, but like when it came to like the drafting part, like it was
Well, I mean, you know,
like the Eagles, sorry. The Sixers are very blessed that like Joel like overcame his feet problems
no,
because
I absolutely.
you
But, like,
know
they were fixated on drafting a big. That's how you got Nerlens, that's how you got Okafor, and that's how you got Embiid, and, you went 1 out of 3 on those, and then you had your 2 guards that you went, I guess, 0 for 2 at, and it's just, you know, I don't know. I'm not saying, "Oh, Hinkie woulda drafted Tatum or something like that," but shit, maybe I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the Celtics would've maybe just wouldn't have made it the trade for this with the Celtics, giving them picks to just move up and take the worst player. I don't know.
probably not. That is not. Yeah, I would agree that
Maybe he
that's
would have
not.
just stayed at 3 and said, "Whatever the Celtics wanna do, you go do."
Yeah,
Maybe the
like if
whole
they would have
thing's
just
different.
stayed at 3 and drafted Fultz, then like it wouldn't be
It
as
just looks
bad.
worse. Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, real quick though, we're talking about like the NBA and like did you I I've been just been kind of like trying to keep up like obviously like Christmas was good for the NBA,
Mhm.
but I also just feel like right now like the media itself just they're still just talking about like the same teams. Like I didn't realize until like a month ago that like the Cavs were like number 1 in the Eastern Conference and no one talks about them. Meanwhile, like the Golden State Warriors are 500. Steph Curry's old. Everyone they're still talking about. Oh, can the
You wanna talk about what the NBA's actual problem is that they have such a market fixation. Um, and baseball also has this problem, but they're getting better at it a little bit. However, the NBA has this problem mightily, and it was so painted out in plain writing when for the NBA Cup, the in-season tournament, when the semifinal matchup was the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Houston Rockets. At the time, the 2 top teams in the Western Conference, the 1 and the 2 in the Western Conference, were facing off in the semifinal of the in-season tournament, and the blurb was Oklahoma City versus Houston may not be the marquee matchup fans were hoping for, or we were all hoping for, but it still proves it's going to be a good game. And it's like, what are you talking about? Why are you talking about the 2 best teams in the Western Conference that way? Just because it's not the Lakers and it's not the Warriors or it's not Kevin Durant and the Suns, just because it's not Jokic and the Nuggets? Like, what are we talking about here? Because it's Oklahoma City and Houston doesn't have James Harden anymore, and that's not a marquee matchup. You can't sell that. That's the problem. They're so obsessed with marketing markets instead of the actual star players that are around. And, you know, Giannis does everything he can despite being in Milwaukee, but it's still you still see the Bucks get left out of things, and it's because they're Milwaukee, and it's not New York, and it's not Boston, and, it's not Miami, those sort of things, and it's just I think that is their big problem, is that you need to abandon the markets. The NFL is the best way, they handle it the best way. I know it's different a little bit because of quarterbacks and positional value, but the best player, most talked about player in the sport plays in Missouri. I promise you the market does not matter. One of the other best quarterbacks, best players in football plays in Buffalo. I promise you it is not the market, not the team they play for. 2 franchises that, you know, aren't necessarily known for winning a bunch either, but now are in a state of success because of it. One another great quarterback plays in Cincinnati, Ohio. What are we talking about here? Even Baltimore is not that big, but one of the 2 worst teams in football are New York, and the NFL does not view that as a problem. The NFL does not care. Yes, the Jets get talked about and the Giants get especially the Jets, get talked about a lot that they're gonna turn it around, figure it out, or whatever, but there's still so much other time you're talking about these star players that play for teams that are not that massive, that they don't have an issue with it, and the NBA, they never talk about De'Aaron Fox in Sacramento. They never talk about Shea a ton in Oklahoma City. Everyone complains about, you know, too much threes, too much threes. One of the best players in the league, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, operates completely out of the mid-range. He plays a style of basketball that, according to these people, would be the most aesthetically pleasing way to watch, but no one watches it. Whether it's because the NBA doesn't put him on national TV enough, perhaps, or because people don't actually care about what they say they care about. But, there's a highlight video going around. It's about 3.5 minutes long of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander cooking, and everything's in the mid range. Everything's at the rim. Everything's a fallaway jumper, free throw line jump. And it's like, this is what everyone's clamoring for, but it's not getting pushed. It's not getting talked about. It's not getting, uplifted into a certain light. And I don't know, does he have to win an MVP to get this recognition? I don't know. Dame got a ton of talk for all those years and being in Portland. Why can't Shea get it?
So I have a theory as to why they like no one really knows all about Shy or De'Aaron Fox or the guys that play in the small markets.
It's not that no one knows, but it's just the casual. Like, we're talking about you should be able to throw out a name and people shouldn't have to scratch their heads when you're talking about like a top 5 or top 10 player in the sport.
So I think because ESPN was very vital in like the early parts of the late 20th century, early 21st century, with Sports Center being purely a highlights, driven show where you could wake up in the morning, you put on ESPN,
Mhm.
and you would just have highlights of games play over and over, where you would be like, like someone who like our ages or younger would just like, you're at school. You could just, if you think about it, Michael, just get your phone
Everything's
and I
on
can
the
just watch
phone.
Shy highlights and be like, damn, Shy's really good. Oh my God,
Yeah,
he cooked the Pacers the other night.
right.
Or like, no, it's because it's market driven, it's narrative driven. Like
Mhm.
ESPN just creates the narratives, and if when the problem, what people don't respect ESPN anymore is that the narratives they're creating doesn't match reality. Like in other words, like
They're not sport based. It's not fundamental into the sport of basketball, where at least the football ones have some nuance about the game itself, you know? Like, the average fan in sports does not know about basketball the way that they know about football. You could pick up Madden and go play it, and you'll have a general basic understanding of like defensive coverages. You'll just get it just from playing Madden a good bit because you have to call the plays. You have to call cover 3 and realize there's 3 deep zones. You have to call cover 2 too. Man, all that sort of stuff. People get that. So when you see on TV, it's Dan Orlovsky or, Chase Daniel or whoever at the board, like, drawing out plays like, "Alright, well, you're gonna have this." You can kind of follow that and you can get that. If you sat there with some, like, say before JJ Redick became a coach, this is what he would kinda talk about on his podcast. If you had JJ Redick up there drawing up and talking about all these different defensive coverages in basketball that people don't hear that lingo get spoken. You watch a football game, you hear Greg Olson, "Yeah, they're in cover 2 here, but it's a cover 1 shell that they rotate into cover 2," and people kinda get that. But in the NBA, if you had Richard Jefferson breaking down a defensive coverage that wasn't just like, "Oh, and good help defense here," but they were actually using terms and stuff that they use in practice and in meetings and stuff like that, the average fan would be lost, have no idea what they're talking about. So, the general knowledge about basketball and football are very, very different. I think that's what leads us to these shows, like you said, they're all narrative based, and when you start bringing on just a bunch of former players just to talk about, you know, what do you hear about all the time in
But
NBA talk?
I feel like
Legacy,
yeah, but I feel
like
like fans would like people that would watch ESPN would want to know more
they
because
would, but at this point, it's not what gets produced. What gets produced is, you know, what does a ring mean for, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and the Thunder? What does Kevin Durant getting a ring without Steph Curry mean? What does it mean if
no
LeBron was
one
able to get
cares
his 5th
about
ring?
that.
But that's all they talk
Like the
about. That's
people
the
like
problem.
they're literally catering to the lowest common denominator.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly, and it's all legacy talk. It's all, you know, just it's not good for the sport because 'cause you're not actually teaching about the sport. You're loosely talking about the players and
Like,
putting them
dude,
in a
like
box in a
Michael,
certain
back in the
way.
day, like when you would watch like ESPN when they would have like a talk show as opposed to like just like showing highlights, they would be like, "Oh man, look at how like Kobe's cooking in the triangle offense."
Yes, no, I
Look at look
absolutely
at
agree
look
with
at
you.
the Suns running the 7 seconds or less. They're just
And if you and
zipping
if
up and
you
down the court.
if you, like, really wanna point to an issue, you alluded to, you brought it up. If I wanna go watch highlights, I can pull out my phone, I can go on 5 different apps. I can go on Twitter, I can go on TikTok, I can go on Instagram. Hell, Snapchat has highlights now. I can go on so many different apps to just look at highlights, quickly and accessible. I don't need to go to SportsCenter and turn on the TV to see my highlights. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but what has that created? It's created talk shows that are also trying to get clips that can go on TikTok and on Instagram. No ESPN TikTok account is gonna post, "Oh, look at this great breakdown from Dan Orlovsky on, Sam Darnold's quarterback play," and it's like a 5-minute long clip. No one's watching that shit. But you know what they are gonna post? They're gonna post, Listen to what, listen to what Ryan Clark had to say about the Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson debate, and it's like him saying, I think Lamar's got 2 MVPs, it's not even close," and it's like a 20-second clip, and that can go viral, that can go be posted, and it has no, like, serious substance to it, but at this point, what they talk about in, like, production meetings and what they actually put on TV now are things that are able to be turned into content for social media and short form content. It's a lot less data and nuance and, evidence behind what people are actually saying. As long as you can get out the big headline point, and that can be something that goes out on social media, like, "Oh, this Rex Ryan rant about how soft whatever team is." And it's like, that's all you need to say? Versus, again, like you said, when I was a kid, when you were a kid and you put it on, you would just see highlights and you'd see the guys talking about sports, and you probably could not pick like multiple 10-second, 15, 20-second blurbs that would have been good enough to be put on social media today because that's just not what it was. So now, since everything is so
And to me,
instantaneous,
this isn't
you know,
me going like a nostalgia rant, Michael. It was like you would watch what the highlights, you would watch what happened, and you would sort of just form your own opinion as opposed to needing like I know he doesn't work for ESPN, but like someone like Nick Wright with his friggin' rat face yapping
Give a
about
narrative. Yeah. Yeah.
yapping about something that's just not true.
Yeah. No, it is a lot of people base their opinions off what they hear from others as opposed to basing their own. And again, this isn't to say SportsCenter should just be a highlight reel and no one speaks ever, but you strayed so far away from what it used to be, and you bring in a bunch of former players, but you're not even letting the former players really talk about the sport in a way that actually, like, they can do, you know what I'm saying? Like, they were in all those practices, they were in all those team meetings, they were in all those locker rooms. You can talk about the sport at such a higher level than someone who's never been in any of those things. However, the way they kind of program them to speak and the way they act on TV, it's all a bunch of narrative-based stuff. It's all a bunch of, hearsay and this legacy there, and the MVP means more for this, and da, 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 and it's you got to win how many more championships to be on the same level, all that sort of stuff, as opposed to I know that you guys could talk about certain defensive sets or certain offensive motions. I know you guys can, but you're just not allowed to, and that just blows because that waters it down everywhere. It's the whole people don't like the NBA because of how many people complain about the NBA. It doesn't help when all the time you're all the panels are complaining about players not playing, complaining about this, complaining about this, complain, complain, complain. It's what baseball was dangerously entering when you had a lot of old people and still on announcing complaining about bat flips and stuff. Like people don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear about the sport being talked about negatively because you're going to start feeling negative about the sport. Football never talks about their sport that negatively. For every negative, "Oh, it's so soft with the quarterback rules," everyone almost agrees with that. It doesn't turn them off from the sport.
Could you imagine, dude, if like in the NFL if people talked about like um
People talk about passing the way they talk about shooting threes, like,
no or like if they were talking about like, you know, oh god, like even though Josh Allen has a concussion, he needs to play because it's prime time. He has to play.
yeah, exactly. Because it's Sunday Night Football. Just because you got a bum hand, like, you gotta get out there, and it's like, Jesus, like, what are we talking about here? It
Like
just
they would never do something like that. They would you would get
no.
crapped on. Where like in the that's I mean that's a problem too. But like kind of back to my point of making it more about what the game action. It's like okay, Embiid's hurt, but look at Tyrese Maxey. Oh,
That's what I yeah, like, it doesn't need
look
to
how
be
great Tyrese
all
Maxey is. Now if
yeah, it
it's like
was
now the Sixers are really running their beast like the blue coats in a game because they're like ravaged by
I
injuries.
hear you, that's
That's
one
a little
thing.
different. That's a little different. I understand that, but it's sort of like NFL highlights. Like think about this way, Michael. You don't have to watch NFL highlights if you put on Red Zone.
No, that's all the whole thing is highlights. That's you see everything.
That's like so I it's to me it's like they need to I mean realistically like the NBA needs to like sit down, probably needs to like whatever they're doing, like that's like is not working, and it's an in-season tournament or forcing injured players to have to play,
Yeah, just
or
because 'cause you're in season tournament, which what, it festers up a little bit of
fining
excitement.
teams for load management is not going to help their
No, you
issue.
have this many players that sit so often, then play less games. You're staring the problem right in the face. Play
Or
less games.
start the league on Christmas.
Yeah, and play less games. Like, just straight up, and, like, don't have the owners start trying to prorate contracts and stuff like that, because then the players won't go for that, and you have such a problem, and then you'll have an even bigger problem. Like, it just I don't know. It's all very frustrating.
Do you want to do the picks or the bold predictions?
I will start with the bold predictions
Okay.
of 2025. So, would we like to review our
Oh God.
2024 gold bold predictions?
Sure. Why not?
So, to review, we do one for each team. One for each team. The four major teams: Flyers, Sixers, Phillies, and Eagles. So, our Flyers and Sixers takes they tend to usually be about the current season. We could make it whatever we want, just whatever. Phillies and Eagles. Okay. So I'm just now realizing your Eagles take was actually for last season. I'm
We can make it for
remembering
this
that
season.
now. It was not for this season. I'm just remembering this now. Anyways, so my Flyers take at this time last year was that they were going to make the playoffs and they were going to win a round. Not only did they not win a round, they didn't make the playoffs. They collapsed. It was a disaster. They played a stretch of very easy games and they needed to get like 7 points and they got like three. It was just not good. Um, your bold take was that Claude Giroux would be back. Perhaps no, it's over. 2024 is over. They did not get Claude Giroux. Maybe this year though. Maybe this year. Sixers. So if everyone remembers, on basically January 1st, where the Sixers were at, Joel Embiid was in the middle of his 30-point streak. He was probably at like 17 or so, maybe less, maybe like 14. That ended up getting as high as 21 straight games of 30 plus points. So I said Embiid's going to win the MVP, and the Sixers are going to make it to the conference final. Little did I know, about 3 weeks later, Joel Embiid's knee got absolutely eviscerated, and he ended up missing the next few months before rushing back and hobbling around in the playoffs in a first round loss to the Knicks. Okay. The Sixers were so positive that John said the Sixers were going to pass the Celtics, finish with the 1 seed in the Eastern
I think
Conference,
I could
and
tell I was being very facetious when I was
win
making
the
a lot of
NBA
these
final. Listen, the
these
Sixers
picks.
at this time last year were in a much better place than I think a lot of people remember. Uh, onto the Phillies. I said Alec Boehm will have an 820 OPS or higher. Now, it was there for maybe about 3 months, but it was a slow decline that got him to even below 800. Lovely. I said Nolo finished top three in Cy Young voting. Did not happen. Not even really close. He didn't have like a bad year, a terrible year, but it just wasn't, You said Trey Turner was going to be top three in MVP voting. No, pretty much. That's it. And Bryce Harper will be the starting first baseman in the All Star game.
Aaron Nola got one fifth place vote for the American
Okay,
National
I'll
League Cy
I'll
Young.
I'll take that. A nice little
To put that
handshake.
in perspective, Christopher Sanchez got two fifth place
Yeah,
votes.
look at the rotation, man. But you got correctly Bryce starting
Ryan
first
Helsley
base in the All
got
Star
votes for
game.
the Cy Young.
Yeah.
Really?
So then the Eagles take. You got Bryce at the All Star game. That was good. Eagles take. They keep Brian Johnson. Did not happen. He's actually good. Maybe he is in Washington. And the offense is closer to 2022. That looks pretty good. But not because of Brian Johnson, that's for sure. Your Eagles take, I'm now remembering, is for what we witnessed last year, was that they would
No,
go on
no,
a
no,
run,
no. It was for
go on a run and
this
win the
year.
Super Bowl. It is not this year
It
at
was for
all.
this year.
It is not this year at all. Um, so that takes us to 2025. 2025. Oh, 2025.
You want to start with the Fly Guys?
We'll start off with the Fly Guys. Let me think for just a hot second, because I do want to. I'm refining out my final fourth take. I do have my Flyers take, but I am refining out some other ones. Uh, okay. Flyers bold prediction. My bold prediction. It's not a good one. It's not a fun one. Um, I can say Michkov wins the Calder. That would be fun, and I believe it, but I'll let it slide. And what I am going to say is that they do nothing. They trade no one of note. They don't sign anyone of note. They do nothing of note, and they're essentially just wasting everyone's time. That is my bold prediction for the Philadelphia Flyers in 2025. More of what we are witnessing now, and not a lot of changes, just kind of waiting it out for that white whale that they keep saying is going to come around instead of actually trying to force the issue and do something. with their own vices. So I say they do nothing.
My bold prediction, I have two. Michkov is not going to win the Calder because sit him.
Ah,
Torts will sit him at least 2 or 3 more times, and he'll miss more games. When
that blows.
the where Macklin,
Celebrini.
Celebrini, and like the voters probably all hate Russians anyway. Let's probably be honest here. They
Yeah.
probably they probably see what's going on. What for whatever reason. And Macklin's Celebrini from the Sharks, who has 27 points in 29 games, he'll win the Calder award.
Mm.
Now, and because he'll win the Calder, not because like Michkov isn't better than him or whatever, because Macklin Celebrini is pretty
No,
good.
it's a torts thing.
It's going to be Torts, and everyone's going to be so pissed that Torts will not be coaching the Flyers after this season. He will not be
Mm.
coaching the Flyers because I think he's going to scare away free agents. B, like he seems to be like, listen, I'm not saying that we need a coach. Like the coach should be someone that's like friends with the players. He's hanging out with Farabee and Tips after the game, drinking beers or something like that.
No, you just need to change
I
your
just need
voice.
someone like there's like holding guys accountable, but like the coach doesn't hold himself accountable.
No, he doesn't. All right.
So I think Michkov doesn't win the Calder, and
But
then because he's being
it's
sat,
sacrifice. He sacrifices the
and it's going to
Calder.
cost the Flyers like revenue. Like that's the thing. Like this is like you're
Well, Sixers, Philadelphia 76ers. So I get this is, I would say, bold for as the season has gone on
but
and
nurse
all the
gets canned
injuries that have progressed. No, they make the playoffs not as a playing team, but as an actual playoff
like the
team.
8th seed.
No, like the 6th seed or the 5 seed.
That is bold.
And I think they have a I think they win the first round, and they have a very hard fought second round battle that I'm gonna lean and say that they're gutsy enough, they're scrappy enough, and they find a way to win, and they make it to the conference final finally this year. In a year where legitimately no one expects it. Every other time there was always an angle that you could push to say, "Yeah, this will be the year. Yeah, this will be the year." This is the year where no one is giving them even a remote chance. From out the gate, from the summertime into the fall, no one gave them a smithering of a chance. The way it started, 3-14, all the injuries, no one gave it a chance. This is the time they do it.
So my bold take for the Sixers is that they're going to acquire Jimmy Butler
Oh, jeez. Oh, boy.
because I think Joel this is probably like his toughest year. I think since like his first 2 years with the Sixers.
Mhm.
And Jimmy Butler right now, he's been suspended 7 games by the Heat. He just
Yeah.
does not want to play there anymore. Like whatever, like I don't know why he signed an extension if he didn't want to be there in the first place. And the Sixers wanted to trade for him. Like they weren't even like the reason why like they were like kind of not doing it like a hesitancy with Podcast P, but Podcast P he was not the first choice.
No.
It was
No, he was
not
not.
their first choice. It was Jimmy Butler. And I think because all of the Colangelo, like the people that Jimmy Butler did not like on the Sixers are no longer here.
Yeah,
He would be open to returning here.
Ben,
And
Brett Brown.
this would be a move to placate Joel. Now, how would they make it work financially? I don't know. I don't know what,
I think
but
you can do it without having to trade. Like you'd have to trade some salary.
you would trade
Like
basically
KJ
all
Martin. KJ Martin's got to go because he's got the salary balloon.
probably in Caleb Martin.
You send him back to Miami. Oh man, that would be interesting. Maybe you get a third team involved. Probably that's probably the actual way that would happen. Is
But
you get a third team,
I think they would have to trade the.
third team involved, getting some salary going the Heat's
I
way.
mean, do you think they would trade? What's like the pick, the Clipper pick?
Yeah, there's the no. They'd have to
They're
make
gonna have to
some
trade the Clipper pick, the one they got for Harden, that's like unprotected or like top 3 protected or
top six
something,
protected, whatever it is. Yeah.
whatever it is. Like that, they're gonna have
Yeah.
to trade that.
Mm.
So that's my
On
bold prediction. They get Jimmy Butler.
on to the Phillies. My first two are not necessarily that bold. They're not that bold, but I think we're there. And then I have like a third sort of thing that does make it a little more bold. I think Wheeler gets his Cy Young. I think it's a matter of time. He's been the best pitcher in baseball
Is
for
this gonna be like the Josh Allen sympathy like MVP?
no.
Like he did, like he needs to get one because he's
He
never.
does. He really does. I mean, he's been the best pitcher in baseball for 4 years now. There's just always been one guy that has a better season. Well, one-off better season, but like in totality, it's been Wheeler. And everyone thinks this year it'll be Skeens. No, Wheeler gets his, and the
I
Phillies go back,
disagree. Oh, go ahead. I agree.
and
I
they
feel
get
like
back in the NLCS, and whatever happens is whatever happens from there. I do not control. And then my bold part is that they're actually gonna have two guys that finish in the top five of Cy Young voting. Wheeler obviously being one of them. And then honestly, I'm gonna leave it open. It can be any of the other four starters
that's not
making it.
bold. That's very.
Two
Eh,
in the top five? That's bold. What are you talking about? Two in the
any
top
any other
five? When was the last time
five
that happened?
guys they have can make it.
Any
Pick
other
one.
four?
Pick
Absolutely.
one.
I think they all can.
Pick
Pick one.
one.
Pick one. Full year. Christopher Sanchez. Full season.
Mm,
Healthy.
okay.
Christopher.
Okay. So my bold predictions. They missed the playoffs and Topper gets canned. No, I'm just kidding.
I listen. That is bold.
I'm gonna say Brandon Marsh improves his contact rate against left-handed pitching by 3%. No, uh, no. I'm gonna say that. Ooh, I'm gonna say Rafael Marchand is gonna catch 60 games this year for the Phillies.
Oh boy. Is God, I do not want to think about the circumstances that has forced that to occur.
I think you
Anyways,
might know what that is. I feel like JT
uh,
is going to break down this year. I think he's going to because
that
because they already
blows.
mentioned about them saying like we've always wanted him to catch less games and then he refused to, and now like this is the year he's open to it. And an athlete, no one knows an athlete's
Athlete's body
body
better than themselves.
than themselves, which tells me that he knows that he's like
He
toast.
knows, hey, I won't be able to catch 135 games this year. Thanks.
Yeah.
Ah, it's fine.
So, with that being said, I guess I'll do a second one. I'm gonna say that Max Kepler
Max Kepler. Oh boy.
hits 25 home runs
Okay. That would be encouraging.
with a
Hopefully,
650 OPS. No, I'm just
hope
kidding.
hopefully it's not like, oh, Kepler 25
I
home
just
runs
don't
in
want to
a
pick everyone getting fired. That doesn't
in a
seem very.
lost Phillies season. Yeah. All right. On to the Eagles. I'm doing a two-parter. I'm going to do one for this year, one for next year. One,
Oh
win the
boy,
Super
I
Bowl.
already know
Pretty
one of them. I already know
pretty
one of them.
simple. Win the Super Bowl. Pretty simple. Um, Last time, not last year, year before, I said they would run through their way to a Super Bowl championship. And damn it, they did the first 2
Stop picking
games.
them to win the Super Bowl.
I'm
Stop
picking
it.
them to win the Super.
Stop it.
Listen, I didn't last year. You did that last year.
All right. Well, I'm not doing that again this year, so
And
don't
my
worry.
other bold prediction for the following season is they're gonna break the curse. They're going to win the NFC East again. It'll be the first
Mm.
time since themselves
Everyone's going to pick
20
Washington
years
to win the
ago.
NFC.
Everyone's gonna pick Washington, is right. And I think they're actually gonna have just some sort of Kingsbury regression for sure.
He might
Um,
be a head coach somewhere
if
else.
which that would be asinine. And I think the Eagles are gonna be I don't think the Cowboys are gonna be suited enough to, like, take it. So I think the Eagles win it again next year. There you go. Yours.
I'm okay. So my prediction for this year is that Zach Bond will re-sign.
Oh,
Let's wait. That's
that's
more of a
fun.
next year thing. I was
Yeah,
gonna
that is.
say, okay. Like I say, it could be for this year. I'm gonna say Zach Bond will be re-signed because, excuse me, because of how well he's played and like
Does he become the highest paid linebacker in football?
who's the high? What? How much does Roquan? How much does Roquan Smith make? Also, too, like guys that come out of nowhere to have one good year don't get paid like top three players. Like,
Roquan Smith is making 20 million a year.
okay, Zach Bond will get like 17.5 million a
Fred
year.
Warner is making 19. Tremaine Edmonds is making 18. And then there's a jump to Matt Milano, who's making 14.
That's so he's going to get paid that in that range.
Is he's going to get paid like 16, perhaps? How much
Yeah,
is Where's TJ Edwards? He's only making 6? Jesus, man, they couldn't have kept that. It's fine now, but oh my god. You think about it. We couldn't
yeah,
pay him
like
6 million?
unless like Vic
6.5,
Fangio,
sorry,
unless
6.5.
Vic Fangio knows somebody in the draft that they could draft and plug in day one. But I feel like
Nah, it's Zach Bond. You gotta keep Zach Bond.
they're
Be a total
they're going to
squander.
keep Zach Bond. My second bold prediction is that with the Eagles' first round pick, I know
They
this
draft
is
a wide
so
receiver.
out. They're going to draft from the University of Iowa tight end Luke Lachey with their first round pick.
Okay. Luke.
Because the Eagles love to do the what's the most popular thing to do? It's like draft Georgia defensive players, draft Alabama players, like draft the white guy from,
From Iowa.
from Iowa. like let's see where he's projected, Luke Lachey, because he's was one of the most highly sought after tight ends in the draft. Oh wait, he's not even like wait. He's had a down year. Oh wait,
Yeah,
never
everyone's
mind.
saying he had a down year.
Tight end 9. You know what? I'm gonna can I
Yeah,
amend my
rescind. You can
can I
rescind.
rescind that? All right.
Yeah.
I was getting too cute. I'm gonna say that they're gonna draft from Penn State
Tyler
Tyler
Warren.
Warren
Nice.
with their first round pick.
Do you think they need to? All right, and that's our bold predictions for the year, folks. We will check in about 12 months. Okay. So
Ready for the
I guess it's
picks?
about that time for the picks. Week 18 is upon us. There are not many not many games at all of meaning. A lot of teams sitting guys, not a lot of potential movement among everybody. So to kick us off, we got 2 games today, Saturday. The AFC North bouts. The Baltimore Ravens are at home against Cleveland Browns. The Ravens need a win to lock up the 3 seed and the AFC North division title with a win against the Browns. Derrick Henry needs a touchdown for like an incentive. Um, you know, a whole bunch of stuff in that sort of space, but there's really no conceivable way that the Ravens lose today, I think. I can't imagine
It would
once.
be a like borderline
Monumental.
fireable offense if they lose today, Steelers win the division, and then like they
You gotta go play a road playoff game. Like, it would be unbelievable to grasp. Um,
Michael, like Lamar Jackson's a two-time MVP, probably should be a three-time MVP. They're not going
they're
to
not
lose.
losing today. Yeah. They're
That
not.
is not happening. That
They
is,
are.
the fact that like there's 8% of the money line on this, as like people are just degenerately betting them, and like this like because they're probably like plus 1,000.
Mhm, mhm.
Like, oh, I'm just gonna put $1 on the Browns in case like
Yeah, it
no.
does not make much sense.
I will say this with the 19 and a half points. That is a ton of points. And the Browns posted a video of Rodney McLeod, Eagle legend, Rodney
Mhm,
McLeod. It's his last NFL game. And he's from Maryland, not that far from Baltimore. And
mm.
apparently his whole family's going to be there. And they were all, there's a video of his teammates picking him up over their heads, carrying him and tossing him into a pool. Like you're like, oh wow, like they look like they're really together. And then you're like watching that, and you're like, oh, they're just gonna get obliterated by
Yeah, it's gonna
Baltimore.
be ugly. I'm taking Baltimore minus the 19.5. Um,
The Browns put a bunch of key players on injured reserve at the end of the seasons. At the end of the
yeah, like,
season,
they're trying to lose. They don't wanna win.
because
Uh,
they have a path to the first overall pick.
mhm, mhm.
Like
Um,
it's a shame because you have like Miles Garrett, right? He's asked he would rather mess up the Ravens division title hopes than earning the sack crown, which
yeah,
is like the correct answer, you know.
yeah, yeah.
Um yeah, I'm taking the Ravens. I don't like listen, when the Ravens play bad teams, Michael, as you well know, they tend to put up a lot of points on them. Wait, no.
Yeah.
Rescind that. When they play bad teams, they blow it. Never but there's no Jameis. It's by the way, sorry, I haven't had my coffee yet. So if I'm just talking
You're fine.
nonsense.
You're fine. I was
Dude,
just looking at some tiebreaker
do you remember when
percentages.
DTR lit up the Eagles in the preseason and like a lot of people were like
This
hyping
guy
him
could
up?
play. Yeah.
Yeah, DTR can't play.
No, he
The fact
probably
this
can't.
isn't Jameis is like insane to me.
Well, it's not even DTR, right? It's Bailey Zappi, no?
Oh, it could be the Zap
It's
Daddy.
it's Bailey Zappi, yeah.
Oh, it's
He's in
even
there.
better. Did you see the report that the reason why they benched Winston and they're kind of tanking now is to like justify reinstalling Deshaun Watson as the starting quarterback?
That's an insane reason, considering the stuff that they're doing to get him off the books sooner. The financially smart way to do it, whatever. Um, alright, so we're both taking Baltimore with the huge line. That takes us to the line has moved to 20.5. So I think I'll still take Baltimore, but
That's probably the
20 and a
largest
half.
NFL spread I've ever seen since like
Yeah,
the Eagles when they played the 2007 Patriots and they were getting 20 points.
yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, that takes us to the night game. Bengals Steelers. Um, the Bengals are favored, 2.5 point favorites on the road against Pittsburgh. Now, there's a lot on the line, more on the line than I think people are understanding. It's not just the Bengals have something to play for, and it's not just the division that the Steelers have to play for either. Obviously, the Bengals, they need some help. They need to win. They need the Broncos to lose to Kansas City tomorrow, and they'll also need Miami to lose to the Jets tomorrow if the Bengals want to make the playoffs. However, the Steelers, they are in a playoff position. They're playing for seeding, though. They need to win to ensure that they are the 5 seed. If they lose and the Chargers beat the Raiders tomorrow, which I like to think that's going to happen, the Chargers would leapfrog them and become the 5 seed. And I think when you look at the AFC playoff
Was there a
picture,
difference between playing the Bill, like playing Baltimore versus playing the Texans?
yeah, if you are not a home division winner, you want to be the 5 seed this time around. You do not want to go, like you said, go play one of the 2 potential MVPs on the road. You'd rather be the 5 seed and go to Houston and play the hapless, seemingly Texans. So the Steelers do have something to play for. All that being said, though,
Hey, CJ Stroud just said his goal for 2025 is to be locked in with the Lord as much as
there's
possible.
a little more. So yeah, we'll see if that. So some would say he needs to lock in with Satan and get on when
Like
Mahomes is
Mahomes.
on. Yeah, but if I had to, I'm still picking the Bengals minus 2.5 here. I think the Steelers. It's what they do. They play this seemingly good football all year, and then it's just kind of all it feels like it just stops working. Like, it just feels like they run into a wall eventually, and they just kinda dissipate, and it's why every year, like, you look at the Steelers, and it's like they have this good record, but maybe they're not as good as we think, but, they're still a feisty or frisky team, and then they, like, limp into the playoffs, and you blink, and they're, like, a 12-point underdog on a road playoff game against, like, Kansas City or against Buffalo, and you're like, "Okay, well, that was it for the Steelers season." And it feels like they're just on that same similar path, and I don't think that path plays as well as it usually does if they go play Houston, because I think that is a winnable game for them. So I am gonna take the Bengals minus 2.5. I think they put the pressure on and, put the pressure on the Broncos tomorrow and the
I
Dolphins as
mean,
well,
well, I don't want to tip my hand with the picks, but I'm
but I'm
just
taking the
talking about
Bengals.
this game. Michael, I'm taking I love the Bengals tonight. I'm going to tell
Yeah.
you why I love the Bengals tonight. When you look back at the 2024 Pittsburgh Steelers, what was like the point of the season where you're like, this is where they just this is where they died basically, and then they were just zombies the rest of the year. Like, just to kind of, I guess, example of this is like, when did the 2023 Eagles die? It was when Drew Lock engineered a game-winning drive in Seattle where James Bradbury allowed 6 catches on 6 targets. That's where they just died, right?
Is your death the Eagle game? Because they
I
won
think the
2 games
Steelers'
after the
death is
Browns
when
game.
I think the death for the Steelers is when the Eagles ran 10 minutes off the clock on a final drive. And the reason why I say that is the Steelers' reputation is they're this tough team, and, defense, they've got a lot of names on
They don't
defense.
get pushed around.
They don't get pushed around. When you let a 10-minute drive end a game happen to you, you're you're soft. You're soft. I mean, am I wrong?
No, I think the only John, I'll say this, I think the only thing that could have been, like, you wanna say, "Oh, what's something that could have gone even worse last year for the Eagles?" It would have been something like that. Like, they're down a score, and they allow a 96-yard, 10-minute drive to end the game, and you're just watching the defense slowly, slowly die. The thing is they weren't even capable of that because they couldn't tackle. They couldn't do anything that it would have been almost impossible to go on a 10-minute drive against the Eagles because they just would have been daring you to give up a big play anyways. But I think that is something that could have been, like, only thing could have made it worse. Like, in the playoff game, they're down 12, and I watched Baker go 98 yards in 10 minutes, and the game's over. And I'm like, okay, that was the worst thing ever. But no, you're right. I think that was, and you could just, simpler minds, not to ridicule, may look at this and be like, well, they just played 3 straight really good teams that are clearly better than them. And perhaps that's true. Perhaps that is also true. But it felt like a nail in the coffin because they lost to Cleveland in that snow game, and that felt like, "Oh, this could be a big turning point." But then they beat the Bengals in that crazy shootout, and then they hammered the Browns at home, and it was like, "Okay, back on track." You deal with that against the Eagles, you get bullied by the Ravens, and you get bullied by the Steelers or sorry, by the Chiefs, both of which on, like, standalone games. They were getting pounded, and they were the only game that was on at the time.
I guess like in other words,
They
like
haven't shown a spine
the
since the
the
Eagles game.
Steelers just I think have a certain like mystique about them.
But
And
the
weren't
Eagles
the Eagles
broke for
missing
sure.
Devontae Smith in that game?
The Steeler game?
Yeah, the Eagles were missing, I think,
No, Smitty played,
was it
right?
AJ?
No,
AJ got hurt.
AJ definitely played.
I think because I obviously
Did Goddard only play, like, a play or something?
yeah,
Goddard didn't play.
yeah
Goddard was out.
Mika try to blow his knee out.
Goddard was out. Goddard did not play. Yeah, Goddard never played because the first play of the game was the Calcaterra catch, and then yeah, Goddard
Yeah,
didn't play.
yeah, that was Jalen Hurts' best, like, most efficient passing game of the
Yeah, he was
season.
great.
And yeah, that's the kind of the point is like
Yeah.
that was the week of Brandon Graham. That was
Mhm.
just I don't know going on a 25-minute rant on the relationship between AJ Brown
But
and
regardless, yes, the
regardless, yeah.
Steelers
So regardless, the Steelers just look cooked.
and the Bengals are playing good, so alright, both on the Bengals. Takes us to these lines may be all out of whack by the time tomorrow actually rolls around, if there's some late inactives, whatever, but
I'm pulling up Tankathon, by the way, because I think we have to see
some
certain.
implications, yeah.
Yes,
So, looking at the first game tomorrow, the Saints play the Buccaneers. Now, the Buccaneers, they're in a very, very interesting position because of the Rams not playing their starters despite having something to play for. Sean McVay, he's kind of always been like this. Always valuing the bye week more than seeding, always taking your chances with your players fully healthy and rested instead of worrying about who your opponent is. Interesting philosophy, makes sense for his sort of shtick. So, will not be playing the Rams starters tomorrow against the Seahawks just to confirm that they get the 3 seed.
wait, were you talking about the Rams game? Just because, like, I don't.
Well,
I
because Tampa wins and the Rams lose, then
oh
Tampa moves up a seed. Tampa moves up to the 3 seed if that occurs. And now all of a sudden with the Rams not playing their starters, Tampa really has something to feel good about. I think the Falcons aren't officially eliminated, correct? They can still make the playoffs, I think, with a
they
win and the
need
Bucks
Tampa to
lost,
lose this game.
and they need to win.
They need to win.
So, yeah, point is that Tampa's 14-point favorites at home.
Well,
There's
the
Mike
big thing is that like
Evans
they want to get
incentives.
Mike Evans as 1,000 yards and his
Yeah, he needs
touchdown
85
incentive.
yards. He also needs like 5 catches to hit a different incentive. So I would assume Mike Evans has a nice day, and I think Tampa's gonna handle New Orleans. You know, the Saints are just totally battered. Like no one's playing down there, and so I'm taking Tampa.
I am taking Tampa as well. The Saints right now are currently slated to pick 10th in the NFL draft,
Oh.
and just kind of looking at how like the rest of like I have Tankathon pulled up. Like
Hmm.
if they go to 5-12, and if any of the following teams, the Jaguars, Panthers, Jets, Raiders, Bears, were to win, they could actually shoot up as high as 8 in the
Hmm.
NFL draft. Now, why does that matter? Obviously, in a lost season, you like to pick as high as possible in the NFL draft, especially since when you look at the Saints, um, their season went down the tubes because of injuries. And you
Yeah.
figure, yeah, it could be something positive going into next season. Plus, they're going to have a new head coach. So,
Yeah.
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 So, yeah. And with that being said, listen, this is going to be like, how many touchdowns has Baker thrown this season?
He's
Theo
hit
Ash does not
40 or
like Baker Mayfield at
yeah, it
all.
was funny. I think there's a correct take. There's a lot of the way Baker gets talked about. He gets put in top 10 conversations. I don't think Baker's top 10. Um, I don't think he's as low as where Theo put him either,
I
which is
think
in
he's
like
like when
the
you say he's
20s.
top 10, like he's number 10.
Yeah, and I don't think he's number 10. I think there's a large group of quarterbacks that range from like 6 to 20 that year to year will shuffle around every single time. There's like your core top 5, and then there's a huge like, you know, massive spectrum wave of 6 to 20. And I think Baker's in there, but I think he's close to that back end. Like I'd probably put him close to like 14, 15. But anyways, next game we have is the Buffalo Bills against the New England Patriots. So Josh Allen is only going to play just to get his consecutive game streak, and then he's going to exit the game. Um, so it's going to be a heavy dose of Mitchell Trubisky. Listen, the New England Patriots need to lose in order to ensure that they get the number one overall pick. The New England Patriots are not winning tomorrow. That would be maybe the most shocking thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, I know Belichick's not there, but it's still a highly functioning organization. Like, there's still a lot of pride there, and there's still a lot of intelligence in the building. I'd be shocked, floored, if New England found a way to come out on top and beat the Bills and squander their opportunity for the number one overall pick. So I am
I
taking
wonder
Buffalo.
if this is gonna be like a Joe Brady, like we're gonna cook with Mitchell Trubisky tomorrow, and like because we talk about because listen, Monday is Black Monday in the NFL. A lot of
Mhm.
coaches are gonna get fired. You're gonna see a lot of names. You're gonna hear if
Joe
you're
Brady's a name
if
that
you're a
has
casual fan, you're
been
going to hear a
poached.
lot of names you've probably never heard of before. Now, we obviously
Mhm,
are sicko degenerates, and we know who Joe Brady is.
mhm.
But listen, Joe Brady cooked with cooking with Joe Burrow down at LSU.
Yeah, he's worked his
Right?
way up in
Worked his way
Buffalo,
up.
and he's this is the first year where he feels well, obviously, they made the switch to him last year, mid-season, and he's really done a nice job up there with Allen and all the running backs, Cook, Ty Johnson, Ray Davis, all those guys. They've done a really nice job. So yeah, definitely could be a tryout for him with Trubisky to get a head coaching gig. So you're taking Buffalo as well.
I'm taking Buffalo as well. Plus, like I think for New England too. Did you read that Ben Johnson, like he wants to go to the Jags, but he also may want to go like he seems way more open. He's not doesn't seem very picky with where he wants to go. But
I
I
think
think
he's going to be picky. Like,
but I think like having the number one overall pick is going to make you more attractive for a coach like Ben Johnson because he can make he will be
what are you saying? He's not going to New England.
Drake May.
They're not firing their coach.
Did
They
you
just
read?
hired
Did
Gerard.
you
Are
read
they firing Gerard Mayo?
there? I read that if Ben Johnson wants to coach the Patriots, Gerard Mayo is toast.
Are they going to make him like the DC, or
They're going to
like
make him unemployed
they're getting rid of? Wow,
because apparently,
that feels insane.
I think
I
it's
don't know.
definitely wrong to just kind of
Yeah,
treat
like
him like that.
I don't. Jesus Christ, like one and done on like a tank year with no circumstances other than this other guy wants to coach here. That's ridiculous. Then you shouldn't have hired him. Then you should have hired some.
Because they needed someone to coach the team for a year,
My
Michael.
point, it shouldn't have been Gerard Mayo then. Make it some like veteran guy that understands what's going on. Like not Gerard Mayo who's trying to make his mark as a coach. Go bring in Josh McDaniels for a year. What's the harm in that? I guess you're ruining Drake May. God, what a joke that is. Okay, next game, Bears Packers. So the Packers obviously are playing their starters. They are trying to win. In the event that Washington loses to the Cowboys, they would leapfrog and avoid playing the Eagles. I don't think anyone is dying to play the Eagles, that's for sure. And the Packers, unfortunately, do not control their own destiny in that regard. But I'm sure they'll do what they can. They are not losing to the Bears. I'm
Do
taking
you
Green
feel
Bay.
like these teams that want to play their starters, like, we talked about, like, there was obviously much, we'll talk about it when we talk about the Eagles, but like, if you're the Bears in a lost season, and like Jordan Love's like cooking you, we'll just say Jordan Love's cooking
I'm
you,
taking Caleb Williams out of the game. Yeah, for sure.
and if he's like trash talking, Montez Sweat's gonna say F it and gator roll and blow his knee out.
Oh. Um, no, I don't think players have that sort of like hatred
Kirby
anymore.
Joseph has that hatred.
Kirby Joseph has it. Listen, for every there's a couple that still have it in them, but I don't think you're getting a guy that's going to intentionally try to injure Jordan Love. Because one, I
Well,
don't
like,
think
I don't
Jordan
know.
Love
What
is
if
going to be
like
talking
I don't
shit.
know what happened? What if like I don't
I
know?
think there's much more
TJ
likely that
Edwards accidentally drills Josh Jacobs in the head and knocks him out.
yeah, like I think there's a more likely scenario that there's like a accidental injury than that. I think the Packers are in a situation where they're going to play their starters. It's going to be halftime. They're going to take a peek at the Washington Dallas game. And if that game is like 30-3 Washington, they might say, "All right, Josh, sit
It's
down.
Malik.
Jordan,
It's
sit
Malik.
down."
It's Malik Willis time.
Yeah, yeah. So, but if they look and it's like, you know, 10-3 Washington, they're gonna be like, "Well, shit, I guess we gotta make sure we take care of business here." But I'm taking Green Bay -10, I guess, for now. I think teams should do that, look at halftime, but I feel like sometimes they don't, and I don't know. LaFleur seems smart enough, though, that he might take out his starters, but I'd like to think the Bears
I'm
just
taking
take their
Green
loss.
Bay.
Yeah.
You mentioned Caleb.
The Bears are
Like,
so broken. They're
I
so
feel
looking to the
I feel
offseason.
like all the things that people were like anti Caleb about in the draft are happening.
Mhm.
Most of it not being his fault, obviously, but
Yeah.
like when he kind of just does his like dramatic like laying on the bench,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. After reading what's going on with the Colts, which we'll talk about, like the players definitely notice that, and a lot of them do kind of take it not personally, but they're like, dude, players definitely look up to the quarterback to be like, held to a certain standard. That's why they get paid significantly more
Yeah.
money than everyone else on the team, right?
Mhm.
And like I think for Caleb, getting a good coach is going to be vital for him, but he
Like,
can't.
what's more important with the Bears coaching hire? Is it a culture guy or is it a play calling guy?
Why can't you have both?
'Cause it's hard to get both. You don't really get both, honestly.
What
Can you
was
name
you get a
a
culture
good
guy that is going to bring in a great play caller? I mean, I don't know. It was like Cliff
That's my point. My
Kingsbury.
point is you look at the great culture guys in the NFL, we call it as it is. We got one here, Nick Sirianni. Not a great play caller. Dan Campbell does not call the plays. Two of the best culture guys in all of football. You look at teams that have culture issues, perhaps, like the Green Bay Packers
I
had
feel like
culture
when you have a
issues.
talent like a Caleb Williams, you're going to attract play callers.
I don't disagree with that. My point is that what do we know about Ben Johnson as a culture guy? Not saying he's not because he could. You're being bred in that Dan Campbell crap. You probably have some. You're going to take some of that with you, hopefully, and that
I
translates.
I do feel like with Ben Johnson, like I don't know, like I
But the
think
Bears are so broken and battered. Like you need to really nail your culture pick. If you can't hire some robot is my point, where it's like, yeah, he might be Ben Johnson could be a genius, but if Ben Johnson is, like, as charismatic as a piece of wood, like,
I
you
honestly,
know,
Michael, you know what? I know this is where like a culture guy, like Vrabel would
you
be
might
like
need a culture
I
guy.
think it's Vrabel because you look at the Titans under Vrabel, like you have like AJ Brown, like you've Vrabel's like legit wants to punch out the GM because like he's like really good friends with AJ Brown. AJ Brown is like talking about how great Vrabel is.
The issue is that I do think, us included, if they hire a defensive coach, we're gonna be like, "What the hell is wrong with the Bears?"
Unless he has like I don't know, what if he's just like
It needs to be like A plus plus, like, he's going to be here
We're
for the next
hiring a
5
McVay, like an
years.
actual McVay guy, not like
It's so much. It's
Waldron.
listen. It's not a situation that I envy at all.
What if they
But I
bring in
do
Josh
think,
McCown as the play caller? I don't know.
listen, now you're getting creative. Now that's there's
Former
something there.
Bear. Former
That
Bear.
that that I think has some motion to it because I think he can get through to Caleb. Absolutely, totally can. Josh McCown. So that would be a nice pairing that I could buy
That's
into.
what I would want to be in my OC. Is going to be McCown.
Yeah. And you alluded, so here they come. The Jacksonville Jaguars in Indy to take on the Colts. Colts 3.5 point favorites. Yeah, some issues with the culture or
It's going to
whatever.
be Doug
And
Peterson's last game ever coaching, besides his
yeah,
last
a
game
lot of
coaching the
interesting
Jags.
stuff. So the Anthony Richardson stuff comes out. It reminds me when me and Nick, my roommate Nick at the time, we're talking about Anthony Richardson and how like, all the talent in the world, but do you have the like drive to make the most of it? It's one of those you're so raw that your work ethic needs to be really, really good. It's not like Jalen Hurts was raw, but he doesn't have the talent that Anthony Richardson just possesses. So, he worked really, really hard. He made himself a very viable starter and a very good one. Anthony Richardson has all that talent, makes part of that easier, but he needs to have some sort of drive to really hone in on said talent, make it worth your while. It's not like so someone like Tweet. It was like a anti-analytics sort of thing, but it was the general premise wasn't terrible. It's like I don't care that you can hit a 70-yard pass in stride to somebody if it's pulling teeth for you to hit the 5 to 10-yard passes all the time. And like that's kind of what it is with Anthony Richardson. He'll hit it, but he'll throw it so damn hard with no touch and it gets dropped or it's a little high or the timing's off because there's no touch on the throw, but then he makes that throw where he doesn't even step and it's like 68 air yards, and you're like, that might be the greatest throw I've ever seen. So, you take and give and take, but you need you need someone to get through to him to get the most out of him. And listen, we talk about culture. Shane Steichen may significantly struggle in this department, and this is why I kind of had to worry about Ben Johnson. Is that we're on what back-to-back seasons and multiple games at a time where Colts players are collapsing and playing poorly when it matters most. Last year with Minshew, you had the drop at the end of the game. Granted, that wasn't like terrible in terms of the grand scheme of things, but you came up small and a gift that was in your hand to go to the playoffs. This time around, you're vying with the Denver Broncos for the wild card spot, and you have your best player dropping a touchdown before he crosses the goal line. Changes the whole complexion of the game. They end up losing. What happens this past week against the Giants, who are actively like every reason to lose in their mind to get to get the first overall pick? They just need to lose, and you let Drew Lock have like one of the most efficient, best games in like the last decade. Like, truly statistically, one of the greatest games of the last decade came from Drew Lock and a tanking Giants team. You let the Giants almost score 50 points on you. I don't care if Joe Flacco or not. It's like that's the defense. Like, what are you preaching to your players with season on the line? We need to win, and this is the result that you're getting. Like, that is a total indictment on the coach there. And we're in the first 2 years this has happened with Steichen. This year has been brutal. Talk about a culture thing. Maybe Shane Steichen isn't the best culture guy. We'll see. Um, but yeah, it'll be interesting. And then you mentioned Doug. So what? Does he just want to retire? Is that what that is?
I think Doug.
Is he expecting to be fired and is like, all right, I'm done?
Well, I think Doug, when the Eagles fired him, I think he initially thought he was just going to retire. But I also think that with this Jags run, to me, it sounds like to me with the way he's kind of conducted himself in Jacksonville, it might have been a money grab from the start.
It was
They gave him a lot
money.
of money, Michael.
Money grabs a shame because I'd like to think Doug wasn't trying to
Because
do a
that's
money grab.
that's what pro football in Florida always feels like. It feels like money grabs, no state income tax. You know,
It's interesting because you take the year off, it really felt like he would have spent the year reworking his issues, and he came out of it the exact same. Like, Press Taylor, like, all of it just the same, and it's like, "Dude, what are you doing here?" So, what does this mean? Is he gonna coach his ass off for his last game as a head coach ever? Is he just gonna roll over and die? What do you think? Is he gonna coach it like, "F it," he's gonna go for it on all these 4th downs and stuff because he's like he doesn't
Probably. I
care?
mean, I mean, here's the thing though too is I think he might look at it like I want these guys that I'm going to leave to find jobs elsewhere. So I owe it to them to we need to win this game just so it's like you end this season on a positive note. The thing with the Colts is like if you asked me a month ago about Shane Steichen's like job security, I would have said 100% he's returning as the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. Now
Mhm.
that like the Pat McAfee rant, like Pat McAfee might have cost Shane Steichen his job by just leaking all that dirty laundry about the Colts.
I mean, is
Now,
this like, the Colts need to win to save Steichen's job sort of thing?
it's Michael, it's like you heard about Richardson was like he claims that God, I can't believe I'm going to say it like that. Like he claims like he's on trial for God's sakes. Like he's saying that with his back and his foot injuries that where Flacco had to
Is
play,
he
which
getting surgery? Like, is he getting surgery
they
right
said that he said he couldn't get out of bed and walk. He had to crawl to
Yeah,
get,
I did see that.
which is like
Insane, but
crazy. But I think part of, I mean, Anthony Richardson's issue he doesn't look like he's in shape.
no, and listen, it's not like he called himself out of a game because he needed a breather, like, he looks tired sometimes. I think it reminds me you remember when, like, Lamar said he was out of shape last year, he won an MVP, they lose in the playoffs, and one of the first things he said, he was like, I gotta get in better shape," like or that was one of the first things he said in the offseason, and it was really interesting because they were like, "This guy played incredible, how was he out of shape?" I guess Richards and, like, you see the difference, like, Lamar is seemingly got better from last year to this year, and whether it's because he's in shape and he, like, doesn't get tired so he doesn't throw up as many bad passes to get picked or whatever it may be. But, yeah, I think Richardson calling your tapping yourself out of a game when all you were probably gonna do on that play was just hand it off anyways was really, I think, something that just probably rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, and I think a lot of it starts with the head coach, and I think Steichen could be done after this year, after this game, and especially if they lose. So I'm taking Jacksonville plus 3.5. I think it's a 2 totally different vibes, for the coaching staff that both may need a new head coach, but I think they come on very different circumstances. So I'm taking the team that it's a little more like, "Oh, happy day, send you off on your way, Doug," versus the Titans or the Colts where it's like a disaster.
I'm taking the Jags as well. Yeah, I think with the Colts though, it's not. I mean, firing. Here's the thing: you fire Steichen, like it's the Colts' issue is Ursay. Like Michael
Yeah, for sure.
Ursay is like just not. I think there is a major advantage in the NFL when you have an owner who will just sign checks, and then occasionally when things go off the rails, just be like,
To reel it in. Yeah.
timeout. This is totally no, we're not doing that. Like
Mhm.
this is a bad idea or this is not acceptable. We're gonna upgrade our scouting department. We're gonna put money towards all this, this, and this. You guys make the decisions.
Mhm.
Ursay, I feel like like Ursay's last two GMs were like guys that worked for Howie in a capacity. Maybe stop hiring like the Howie the guys that all work for Howie that everyone claims were the reason Howie was successful have been shit GMs, Michael.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Interesting.
and I, and I wonder if it's because the Eagles, it's like they're the sum of their parts
Mhm.
versus like the one guy that's like I'm like like everyone like you mentioned with like the Lions. Oh,
Yeah.
It's all Ben Johnson. Like, and you're like now you thought about it like critically, and you're just like, there's a lot more going on there than just him.
And it's not just play calling, yeah, and it's like if his, culture and stuff. But on to a game that actually maybe has some loose implications playoff-wise. The Falcons take on the Panthers. Falcons are 7.5-point favorites at home. They are coming off what was a pretty egregious loss. Like that sucked for, you know, obviously as someone that was wishing Washington would lose, that was brutal to watch. It was a very painful watch. Carolina's in a tough spot. They're sitting currently at 6 with 4 other teams with 4 wins that perhaps are all going to lose. So it would behoove Carolina to lose. Like a Carolina win could all of a sudden drop them out of the top 10 potentially. And
That's what I
that
was
would
mentioning with New
simply,
Orleans. If they
yeah, like that would simply
win,
be unideal. And
yes.
however, it's hard for me to not think that Atlanta has like a shock to their core. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like there's a shout at them losing this game. Although the Panthers, since Chuba got put on IR, have been
That was bad. Like that's.
like that was a disaster. That
I mean,
Buccaneers
dude,
game.
if they sat Bryce Young in this game and started Andy Dalton, I would still feel not. I'm not saying they are, nor should they.
No,
But my point is, whatever Bryce Young does in this game, like that's the thing, though. If Bryce Young cooks in this game and looks really good, then like if you're the Falcons, bro, do you need to consider like you could be theoretically entering next year like the worst team in the NFC South, which is like
the
horrible.
Falcons' issue is like they drafted an older quarterback, 8th overall. Spent a lot of years in college. And, like, his footwork on Sunday night was atrocious. His accuracy was bad, and that's a product of
Well, have
bad
you seen the
footwork.
picture of him with having double ACL surgeries or
No,
whatever
I
he
hear
needed?
you. Just, like, he is, like, stepping away from his target all the time. It was bad, man, and it's like, I don't know,
The team revolted and wanted that guy to be their quarterback.
listen, I don't think Kirk Cousins is necessarily the answer. Clearly, he isn't. But I just feel like if you were gonna do that, Penix needed to be probably a little bit more polished coming out of college,
Well,
just for a guy
that's a legitimate criticism because he's
it's
been.
not good that you're like a 5-year college player that's extremely raw.
Do you now? Do you think? Do you think he? I'm not saying didn't prepare to be a starter, but Michael, do you think part of the issue with signing Cousins was like the coaches didn't push Penix as the backup to be like, listen, like
I was just about to say, I don't think the coaches gave enough attention to detail with Penix. I don't think they like, they're gonna go into next offseason where he's the full-time it's fair and listen, maybe it's not even fair to do that because when you look at the Eagles and Jalen Hurts, I'm sure they didn't do that shit with Jalen Hurts either when they first drafted him. Like, Jalen Hurts came in to play and be a starter when Wentz got benched, and, like, I don't know, he was running well because he's very athletic and can run well, but throwing-wise, there was a lot that needed to be worked on, and I just think the Eagles, they didn't feel the need to fully push the development, and then the first year became a starter, you saw
well, do you
strides,
remember?
the
Well, I
next
do
year you saw
remember though
strides.
when Carson was just sucking the joint out. Like he didn't ever say this explicitly, but I think what caused the divorce between him and the Eagles was them drafting Hurts and him not having the full attention, maybe of the coaching
I
staff.
think once he got drafted, I think that was it. Like, you got drafted, the writing was on the wall. Like, I think the draft is what killed it. I don't think, like, he's going out the season like, "Oh, they're giving too much things to Hurts." I think it was like they took a guy, clearly they feel how they feel about me, like, it's over. I'm sorry, like, it was he would have had to have played stupendously to make that Jalen Hurts pick. not relevant to the Eagles, and he just was so far away from that. Where I think Atlanta didn't view Penix on playing this year, didn't give him the near attention to detail, and it's like Penix is a guy, he's not mobile, he doesn't move well, he doesn't really run, so he doesn't have that running upside that Hurts had when he first became a starter. But throwing the ball wise, the technique's pretty poor. The accuracy isn't great. There's very little touch on his throws. Like he missed a handful of touchdowns just straight up because he totally overthrew a guy downfield, or he also wildly underthrew some guys on like shorter intermediate routes. It's a very raw player at the moment. All that being said, I guess they can still beat Carolina, who should
Yeah,
be trying to lose. No Hubbard really hamstrings a good amount of stuff. So I'm taking Atlanta minus 7.5.
I'm taking the
Although, yeah.
I'm taking the Panthers.
Like, there's a part of me that really wants to take Carolina.
And the reason why I'm kind of taking Carolina, even though like so their strength of schedule is 496. So when you're picking in the draft, the tiebreaker is your strength of schedule percentage.
Which I
So
think is BS, by the way.
I agree with
Like,
you.
should it not just be the regular same tiebreakers that get you into the playoffs, like head to head, like conference record, division record if it's in your division? Like, why do we go like what? I don't know. And just whoever's better is higher. And you want to lose those tiebreakers. Why is it I don't know. I think that's dumb. So what?
But
It's the
so I think
worst
so,
strength
but
of
I feel like
schedule?
but I think for Carolina, I think the Bryce Young has a great game ending the season and then going into the offseason with like probably tons of cap space, and being in the position to where look, they'll get a franchise caliber player at probably a position of need for them, right? Like, you know, like Abdul Carter
Yeah.
or Mason Graham or
Yeah.
like Will Johnson. Like, you're still gonna get one of those guys even if you win this game or not. Like, it's not like
I guess.
you know what I mean? Like,
It's not as detrimental.
yeah,
That's fair.
exactly. Like, I'd rather see Bryce Young win games right now than like, oh, we need to tank and
Yeah.
like, you know
Alright.
what I mean? Like, that's the most important thing, I think. By the way,
Alright.
I looked up Zach Robinson, Michael, the guy that was like, by the way, the whole like Raheem Morris, Zach Robinson marriage, in my opinion, might have been the biggest scam since like FTX.
I
Everyone
mean,
talked about that like it was the most greatest thing ever.
yeah,
Yeah.
Atlanta's got issues.
Yeah, they got a lot of problems. Anyway, speaking of the Commanders,
Speaking of the Commanders, they're gonna go ahead and play Dallas. They're only 6.5-point
and they
favorites.
said they're going to play their starters.
They have to. They need to win to ensure that they are the 6th seed. Um, as simple as that. Coming off another huge win, there's a lot of huge wins in a row for the Commanders. I don't see like, is Trey Lance starting tomorrow? They said he's gonna play, but does that mean he's playing the whole game? I don't know. It feels like whenever the Cowboys when Trey Lance gets in the game, it just feels like they have a short list of plays for him to run, and then, like, they just kinda keep repeating them
Trey
until
Lance will, quote, get significant snaps for the Cowboys during Sunday's season finale.
play the whole game. I really don't understand what you're wasting your time playing Cooper Rush all these games are. There's really no benefit. You know what he is, you know what you have. There is no benefit. You're not conning a team into trading him for, like, a day 2 pick or anything like that. Like, there's no reason to be playing Cooper Rush, but maybe you could kind of team into drafting Trey Lance if he's been playing the last 5 weeks and he's been looking pretty decent, but alas.
Oh, so you want to know why do you know why they're going to play Trey Lance a lot? It has nothing to do with
What is it,
that.
an incentive?
Cooper Rush gets a $500,000 bonus in incentives if he plays 55% of the team's snaps this season. Going into Sunday, he's played 52.5% of the snaps. Depending on snaps, he'll need to play most, if not all, of the game to reach that incentive. Otherwise, he'll only earn $250,000 for reaching the 45% mark.
So they're actively not doing Cooper Rush a favor.
Well, when you read about how Jerry Jones spends the least amount of money on his players in terms of bonuses, and the Eagles spend the most. And the fact that you just mentioned, why are you waiting until now to play Trey Lance? To me, I think you might just. I think you. I mean, draw your own conclusions, folks. I'm
That's
just.
horrible. I'm
I
taking
agree.
Washington.
I'm taking
The
Washington.
Cowboys aren't winning. Just straight up, Cowboys are not winning.
No.
Like I'd be shocked
Do you
if
think you
the
should announce the extent Mike McCarthy extension before the game, or is like he's a free agent?
mm, oh God, that they're such a disaster. Um,
Yeah.
Next game we have is
This is a seemingly meaningless game.
no one's playing in Houston's department. Um,
I feel like
as
Houston.
The
I feel
Titans
like
are 1.5 point favorites. That's how you know that. The Titans
need to
need
lose
to
this game.
lose. They desperately need to lose. A win for the Titans, and they are going to jump like from 2 to potentially like 8. Like they desperately need to lose in the worst possible way. I'm not sure how like I don't I think I hope they know this gravity where it's like you're going from top 2 to potentially out like close to out of the top 10 with a win. Like you can't mess this one up, right? So I guess I'll take Houston plus a point and a half.
Receiving Davis Mills, is he the starting backup quarterback on the Texans?
Yeah, it's got to be right. Davis Mills. Is it? Fine. It's gonna be. Oh, are the starters playing for the Texans? Wow. It looks like D'Amico Ryan said everybody has to be ready to go. We'll see how the games go. So I guess in his mind, he wants to play the starters a
Because
little
they
bit.
because they've been asked the last
Yeah,
month.
get some confidence. Well, John, not to like this is the most obvious thing ever. What does this exactly sound like? What is exactly what is happening to the Houston Texans happening again? This is exactly what happened last year with the Philadelphia Eagles. Why was the only reason for Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown and all the starters to be out there at MetLife against the Giants? I want to feel better about themselves. They've been getting beat and they've been losing. The Cardinals game sucked and the Seahawks game sucked and Christmas wasn't fun even though they won and blah 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 blah. Blah. Let's just play the starters. AJ Brown gets hurt, misses the playoff game. Jalen Hurts sprains his finger. It's just a disaster. The Texans are quite literally doing the same exact thing to a T as what the Eagles did last year.
I'm
Is
taking the
this to say,
Titans. I'm taking
yeah,
the Titans.
is this to say the Texans or CJ Stroud's gonna get hurt or anything?
Nico
No,
Collins is gonna
but like, I,
hurt himself.
Texans fans clearly already probably give themselves not a good chance to go anywhere in this playoff run.
Correct.
And fortunately for them, they cannot lose the division, so they'll get a home playoff game at the very least. But nothing could make it worse other than just straight up getting your guys injured. All right, well, wow. Do we want to just talk about the Eagle game now? Is there a point in saving it for last?
No.
No. Eagles Giants. Eagles are 1.5 point favorites at home. No one is
I
playing.
predicted this a year in advance, by the
You
way.
did. You did. When the schedule came out, you had this as lost. No one is playing. They're not going for the record. The correct decision, not even close. It is the correct decision. It shouldn't even have been a second thought. And anyone thinking otherwise, it's insane. Is Saquon upset he wished he could get the record? I'm sure he is. Is the teammates, do they all want to get it? Absolutely. Do they also understand that it is not worth pushing for? It is not. I said this, it was probably the Rams game, I want to say. when Nick asked me, "What is the number that Saquon would need going into the last game of the year in a game where they do not need to play their starters, where you would feel comfortable playing him just to get it? What is that number?" And I said, the highest I would go is probably about 60 yards, a number that you could get with like 2 to 3 big runs, a number that you feel very, very confident that you could get in the latest of whole first half, like 14 carries, 65 yards, even if he got stifled a few times, you feel good about it, get him out of there. A number that you'd like to think, "Oh, if you give him 8 carries in the first quarter, he might break a couple and get it there, and he's done." The issue is that we're not at 60, we're not at 70, we're at 100. He needs 101 rushing yards. That is not
Easy.
easy to get. I don't care who you're playing against. It just might be one of those games. And you're telling me that John Mara isn't going to go into, Brian Dable's office and say, if there's one thing you do this year, you're not letting him get the record against us. I don't care what happens. You're putting 8 guys in the box every play, whether it's Kenny Pickett, Tanner McKee, Jalen Hurts. We are not letting Saquon get the record on us. And if he's going to get it, he's going to freaking earn it. I don't need to be at the half tomorrow and look at Saquon's stat line of 18 carries for 68 yards, and it's like he's close, but he's not even that close. He'll get it if he keeps playing, but he just had what, 32 carries last week against the Cowboys? I don't need him having a 20 plus carry day, which in my eyes is probably what it would take. Sure, he can maybe get it in 10 if he breaks a 2 like very, very long runs. I just that risk was always awful, and I'm very happy that they're not doing it. Listen, you had players like Lane Johnson begging not to play. He was basically saying, "I do not want to play in the slightest bit." AJ doesn't want to play. A lot of the starters don't want to play. And I think it's a good thing that they're not doing. It's clearly the smart decision. Give your team a bye week without, having one. And, we talk about all year. We talked about when the schedule came out that, oh, the teams that win the Super Bowl the last 15 years, whatever, like 12 of them had a bye week later than week 10. Like, that's what the number was, right? And the Eagles had the week 5 bye week. And we were like, shit. Well, turns out you needed the early bye week because the season was like on life support, and then all of a sudden you went on a crazy run, and now you have an opportunity to give yourself a break when you haven't had one since the Phillies were playing baseball. So I think they need to take advantage, and they are, and I'm very happy that they are.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I will say this about the game tomorrow is this is going to sound kind of crazy. I think Jalen is going to be fine for the wild card game. I know people are panicking
He's
about
just
it.
not like they're not putting him in practice. Like I think if they really, really wanted him to maybe be ready, they could start practicing him. But I think in addition to like he hasn't cleared protocol, they're not even letting him practice. They need to let him try to practice to see if he can clear.
Now, reason so, but let's just play devil's advocate. Let's say Jalen's concussion is serious and he might miss the wild card game. I'm just putting it out there for a second. Why on God's green earth would you play Tanner McKee tomorrow? He is right now the only healthy quarterback on the 53-man roster. I think
Oh,
they're
that's what you're getting at. Like they should play what, Ian Book?
who cares? Yeah, he's gonna be the tackling dummy tomorrow.
I do think Ian Book's going to play, for
Like
what
I
it's
would
worth.
like if like because Kenny Pickett's got broken ribs.
Kenny
So
Pickett's not going to dress tomorrow. Well, he'll dress, but he's
if
not.
Kenny
You know.
Pickett was 100% healthy, I would say play Tanner McKee because I would be highly intrigued to see some more Tanner McKee, even though we got a tiny little taste of it last
I
week.
think. I think.
Tanner McKee, which cost me my fantasy league, by the way, with what he was doing, what he did last week.
Devontae. Oh man, that's so. Um, no, I think McKee will play the first half, and then Ian Book will play the second half, and I hope that's what happens, honestly. Like, I don't wanna see obviously, all the guys that are not playing, like, they're not even gonna dress. Jalen, Saquon, Lane, AJ, Devontae, Mailata, Dickerson, uh, like, Bond, and, like, Carter and Slay. None of those guys are gonna have uniforms on. I don't need like, other players that can wear the helmet and shit, but they're not getting on the field is CJ,
Quinion.
Reed, Quinion. You have so much secondary depth that honestly those guys like Cooper DeJean should not play either. Um, Josh Sweat should not play. Uh, oh, Dean's not playing either because he's like actually banged up. Don't need Nolan Smith to play a ton either. It's
No, it's
just
gonna be like it's
Milton
gonna
Williams. Like,
be Jalex Hunt or Bryce
yeah,
Huff.
I don't need to see Cam Jurgens either.
No,
He doesn't need to play. I definitely don't need to see Becton playing. Not even a little
the
bit.
guys that have
Dean can play. Sure, he should play.
an incentive to,
Yeah, get the incentive if it's easy.
or if
You
it's
know.
like you have to start 17 games or something as an
Yeah, yeah,
incentive.
yeah. Please, but do not be out there significantly. Anyone of note, like not for nothing. I don't want to see a ton of Gainwell tomorrow either. To be completely
No,
honest with you, I
this
don't.
is going to be a Tyrion Davis Price. Is Will
Is
Shipley?
Bush?
Is
He's
he
questionable. So I don't know if he's gonna
okay?
pl if he's gonna play, he's gonna play.
You're going to see a lot of Aeneas Smith, Johnny Wilson,
You're gonna see Dotson, and maybe you
Mr.
should see
Dotson.
Dotson.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see a lot of EJ
You're gonna see
Jenkins.
Game. You should. You should not see Calcaterra. You should not see Gray.
No,
No, you should not.
no, incorrect. I don't
Um,
want to see
so
Moro Ojomo. Like he's
no,
been
I don't I don't see anybody. Can we just forfeit? Can we just not
anyone that
play the game?
contributes in a positive manner on game day does not need to play to tomorrow.
I don't need Jordan Davis. No, not at all.
Do you
I
know who? You know who I think tomorrow might be important? Like in all seriousness, in a meaningless game. Do you know it would be nice tomorrow to see? I want to see Jack Elliott hit like go
I
4 for
was I
4.
was just gonna I knew you were gonna say the kicker. I'd love to see Elliott nail a 56-yarder tomorrow. That'd be great. That would make me feel excellent.
And I don't know,
Um,
maybe like Brady, like dude, Brandon Mann
Brandon
has.
Mann's punts have gotten much better as of late, I felt.
Oh, God,
I don't know, I mean,
we'll see.
we'll see.
All right,
But we
we're in uncharted territory doing the Eagles so early, so let's keep going with the.
yeah, we didn't even pick the game.
Oh, man,
All that being said, I do think the Eagles are gonna somehow
I'm gonna pick the Giants because they're complete screw ups, and I'll be honest, Michael. I could see Dable like now the news that like Shadur sucks and he's not even a first round pick.
which I think's a little asinine. I think he's a project. I don't think he should be drafted at 1. But I understand drafting a quarterback that high. I just think if you're taking him, you're gonna work with him. You know, he's got talent, he's got ability.
I think that's the guy they want. He's gonna probably fall to wherever the Giants
I mean, if the
fall
Giants can
to.
manage to win again, drop from 1 to 4 to like 8, and still get the quarterback they want, which by the way, there's no way that they're getting the quarterback they want at 8. They'd have to trade back up, which I think that has a decent probability of happening. Like, I think the Giants could lose, stay at 4. They'll pick 1, and New England at 4 can get whoever they want to get. That's my thought. But anyways, I'll take the Eagles. Giants get it right. The Eagles have good vibes going on, even with the bench guys and stuff. Like, I think they're gonna play a gutsier performance. Do you hear the wind? Is that coming through? No, 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 like through my
No,
thing? Okay, because it sounds like my house is going to collapse. But anyways, next game we have the Dolphins and the Jets. A very important game, actually. That will be quarterbacked by Snoop Huntley. Is Rodgers is playing? Like the Jets aren't sitting anybody, right?
I just looked up. So when we were talking about our picks, I was just like looking stuff up. I typed in Tennessee Titans, and the top news article is Aaron Rodgers projected to sign with Titans, and I was just like, well, that's pretty much sums up what I'm going to pick in this game. I'm taking the Dolphins, dude. Look, dude. I think this Jets team's like baton death march to the end of the season. Listen, they're good. I mean, no,
So you're
no.
taking Miami. So you're that this effectively would eliminate the Cincinnati Bengals from the playoffs. This is a half a point spread. The Jets are a half a point favorite. So you're taking Miami with Snoop Huntley to defeat the New
It's
York Jets
listen,
on the road, by the way, in
listen.
MetLife.
It's going to be a big Jonnu Smith game.
He needs some incentives, I think. Listen,
Listen, the Dolphins players are playing for money, which is why they all went
they're
there in the
playing
first place,
money, and
Michael.
listen, they're
That's
playing
all.
for a playoff spot as well. I think that the Jets are going to win. I think that the NFL really, 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 really wants the Bengals to make the playoffs. And
Well,
they can only go
maybe they
so
shouldn't have
far.
jobbed them against the Chiefs.
Maybe they shouldn't have jumped. They want the Bengals to make the playoffs, and they're going to do what they can to lead up to Wentz and the Chiefs needing to win. And I think we might see some shady calls go to the favor of the Jets. So I'm taking Miami. Next game we have is, the Chiefs and the Broncos. The Broncos are 10.5-point favorites. Fuck, that is messed up, man. Are you
Why is
kidding
it
me?
messed up, Michael?
10.5? Jesus
They're
Christ.
playing that. They're dude. Listen, what has been the biggest concern for the Chiefs for
Dude,
a
the Chiefs are not getting blown out. There is no way that that team is gonna get blown out by Bo Nix. That's not happening. I'm sorry.
it's not the starters, Michael. It's
I
gonna
don't
be their
care.
second stringers.
Dude, you're telling me Wentz is gonna go out there and just be beaten and battered and just play awfully? No shot. No shot they get blown. I'm taking Kansas City plus 10.
What?
You know,
The Broncos win 24-7. That's not inconceivable to you?
it
Doesn't that
is
cover the spread
inconceivable. I think
in an
it's
ugly game?
no,
Carson has a nice touchdown drive
no,
and throws 3 picks.
no. It's gonna be no,
Pat
no.
Surtain is good.
It's gonna be
Listen, Michael.
13-13 in
Pat
the fourth
Surtain
quarter.
is like now like the odds-on favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year. You don't think he
Yeah,
wants to cement that by picking off Carson? They're gonna they're gonna celebrate, pretend they're gonna be shooting ducks when they pick him off.
yeah, yeah,
I'm just saying, dude. Like,
yeah,
listen, I get it. You like Carson. I get it. I get it.
yeah.
We all
Listen,
former Eagle.
I'm
We
taking
all get it.
Kansas City plus 10.5. No way.
I'm taking
No
Denver,
way.
dude. This we're not. Do not overthink this. This is not. Listen, we know Denver's probably one and done the playoffs. Like we all know that.
They don't want him in the playoffs.
How
Listen,
could
I'll be
you rig
honest.
this game?
Strictly,
How could there?
strictly,
You
strictly
can't rig
football
this. It's
here.
impossible.
Now, let's pose the question because listen, this is a divisional matchup. The Chiefs can beat the Broncos to keep them out of the play, keep a division rival out of the playoffs. I hear you. The other side of that is opening the door to letting a team like the Bengals into the playoffs, which that is like hellish. That the no one you don't want to see the Bengals in the playoffs. I don't care how bad their defense is. You do not want to deal with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. You don't want to deal with that, especially Kansas City, a team where the Bengals have beaten them in the playoffs before. You don't want to deal with that. So in every that aspect, you should really want to keep them out of the playoffs more than your division rival. But it is a division rival. Like put us in this scenario. We're locked up. We have nothing to play for. We could potentially win and keep the Commanders out of the playoffs. Would we not want to do that versus letting in a scenario, say the Packers were on the outside of the playoffs and people know how dangerous the Packers are come playoff time and it could be risky. Do we care? for the sake of keeping a division rival out because F them, I hate them? Or do we wanna do the smart thing where it's like, the Commanders are definitely not the better team, definitely not the scarier opponent, so, we'll roll over and let them get in. Do you get what I'm saying? It's an what would you feel with that? That's interesting.
I mean, listen, I think with Kansas City right now, I mean, listen, Kansas City's issues, Michael. Like we all like to rail on people, talk about how like they were frauds or whatever, like all like because people just hate them. I think
Mhm,
you know I do think that their biggest issue this season, in a season where they've lost one game so all
mhm,
season, right?
mhm,
Um, is injuries. And why would you risk like listen, Mahomes, whatever, sacrifices goats at halftime, should have got injured, but somehow isn't, fakes injuries. Listen, all that gamesmanship. If they were to play their starters and like Travis Kelsey, who like seemingly never gets injured, seriously,
mhm,
missed only maybe a handful of games in his career at like 35 years old, breaks his arm
mhm.
because of who they're playing. Who are they playing, Michael? Who's the coach of the Broncos?
Sean Payton.
If you don't think Sean Payton would, if they were to play their stars against them, would take the opportunity to say, you know what, it'd be a real shame if Patrick Mahomes had his AC like blew his knee out tomorrow, wouldn't it? And he's like dangling money in the air when he's saying
Yeah.
it. You wouldn't think that, or like, gosh, it'd be a real shame if you know Travis Kelsey breaks his leg and they cut to Taylor Swift on the broadcast crying her eyes out.
Yeah, I mean, they're not playing their starters, but they're still fighting for something.
I mean, like, what, Noah Gray? Juju? Was Juju
Listen,
going to have a big game tomorrow? Like,
maybe. Carson Steele. Anyways, next game we have Chargers Raiders. Let's get moving here. These games blow. The Chargers need to win to lock up, not to lock up, but to give themselves an opportunity to get the 5 seed. They do need to win, actually, sorry, to lock up. What's the divisional record? If they lose somehow to the Raiders, they'd be 3-3. Yeah, I think if they lose, it puts them in jeopardy of being the 7 seed. So the Chargers need to win to lock up at
they're
least
going
the
to win
6
tomorrow.
seed. Yeah, Chargers minus 4.5. I like that against the Raiders. Seahawks, Rams. Seahawks are 7-point favorites with no Rams starters playing.
Jimmy
Seahawks have
G,
some
baby.
incentives. Seahawks have a lot of incentives to play well, like Geno does as well. I'll take the Seahawks. This is a spot where this is a make yourself feel good about yourself next year. Like you've totally limped towards the end of the season. You kind of choked your way out of a potential playoff spot. I know they're not playing anybody, but it's a spot to make yourself feel good. And I think as a coach, as a first year head coach where things didn't go the way you wanted to, this is something to end on like a positive note. It really, you know what this makes me think of? I know it's a little different because the Eagles had a rookie quarterback too, but you think back, you can always compare something to the Eagles. It's what you know best. The Eagles went 7-9, Doug and Carson's first year. They were 6-9 entering the last game of the year against the Cowboys, against a team that were resting their starters, and in a game that was like, "Oh, they should just lose to get the better draft pick." It's like, you get to a certain point where when the draft pick isn't that substantial or whatever, and Seattle's case is they are currently either going to pick 18, which is the highest you can pick outside of the teams that missed the playoffs. Um,
They're pretty much locked into that pick.
Yeah, if they lose and Atlanta wins and, like, the Bengals might maybe they could fall to as high as what, 14, 15. Like, it's not worth it for them. You need to feel good about yourself, get a win to be like, "Okay, good for the coach, we won 10 games his first year." back on track next year. So I'm taking Seattle.
I'm taking Seattle as well. I agree with you on that statement. I do think with Seattle though, like with their like we don't know, like Sam Howell blows. Geno Smith is going to be on the final year of his 3-year deal next year, so he
Mhm,
might be on the move as well. We don't know.
mhm,
It could be Geno Smith's last game as a Seattle Seahawk for all we know. You know what I mean? I think they want to go out on a positive note. I think, you know, JSN's probably going to have a monster game. I would definitely bet him tomorrow.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
All right. Next game, 49ers Cardinals.
Woof.
Another is about as meaningless as it gets.
Who's the
Um,
quarterback tomorrow? Is it the Pastronaut?
yeah, it's gonna be Josh Dobbs for the Niners. I'm taking the Cardinals. The
I
Niners
am
are just
loving the Cardinals tomorrow, Michael, because
yeah.
listen, the Niners, like their coach, are bums.
Mm.
I'm just kidding. I think Kyle Shanahan's a good coach, but he's very much like a. I could totally see him being like, "This is completely meaningless. I'm not even going to bother with anything this week. Who cares if we lose 49-0? It has no bearing on next season." Kind of like that kind of vibe.
Mhm.
Yeah, give me the card. Yeah, I'll take the Cards. I could see this maybe being like a lot of people slandering Marvin Harrison Jr. I could see him having a big game tomorrow, all things considered, which takes us to the night game with the most
Game of
impactful game.
game of the week
This
is
is the
Rhea,
most important
obviously.
regular season game all season, Michael, in my opinion.
It all comes down to this for the NFC North crown, the Minnesota Vikings, Detroit Lions, couple of 14-2 squads striving and fighting away. A win or a tie for the Lions gives them the 1 seed, and the Vikings need to win to get the 1 seed themselves. The loser falls all the way to 5 and have to go on the road against either the Rams or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I guess the Atlanta Falcons potentially as well. A lot of obviously all the importance in the world to go all out and win this game, get the 1 seed, get yourself the bye, get home field, all that sort of stuff. The Lions defense has been just getting absolutely shredded for the better part of like a month now. Like their month of December was the worst yards per play defense in one of the worst yards per play defenses in history, like bottom 10, giving up like 8 yards a play, something like that. Like truly was remarkably terrible. Um,
They made Debo look good last Monday.
they're just hurt. Like they're straight up just really, really hurt. And it's finally coming around to take them out. Alex Anzalone might play, which I guess helps, but they're just they have not a lot going for them on the defensive side of the ball. Their
You
offense
think
is as
Kirby Joseph is like, I'm going to end every career I can
I
tomorrow? Like
mean,
that
I
mentality?
yeah, that'd be something. But the Lions on offense is still as lethal as ever, even without Montgomery. They're still finding their way to be very dominant on the offensive side of the ball. And then you look at the Vikings, where defensively they still, are not as dominant as they were earlier in the season, but they're still very good. And they cook on offense. They get what they need to
This is
get
a
out of
really
it.
big culture versus this is I think this game has higher implications besides the playoffs tomorrow, Michael. I think this is very much like a culture versus scheme type
Hmm.
of not saying the Vikings have bad culture, but it's sort of like, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think this is going to determine what I think teams may look in head coaches for the offseason as well. I'm going to take the Lions, Michael, because I feel like I know like where you're kind of angling for. I know you want to take Minnesota,
I'm
and
taking
I know you
Minnesota.
want Minnesota. I think as I want Minnesota to win as well for
I
the
really
Eagles'
think it's a
chances.
tough look. Like Detroit, I think has a real shot to lose that 5-4, that 4-5 wild card matchup on the road if they lose tomorrow. I think it was there is nothing more important than for Detroit to get some rest and maybe get some guys back. Maybe.
Did you think it was a dumb decision of Detroit to play their starters against the Niners?
It was pretty pointless. I felt like, when they put Gibbs back in the game, that was dumb. Like, granted, listen, they got out of it unscathed, it was fine, but, yeah, it was very pointless, it was very stupid, in my opinion, that like, it seemed like Gibbs was done, but they were just doing their normal, "Oh, 1 drive, this running back, 1 drive," but it wasn't with Montgomery, it was just with Craig Reynolds instead, and it was like, "Get Gibbs out of the game, like, what are you doing?" I don't know, it just felt like that was really, really stupid. Monra playing all those snaps also I thought was dumb. It feels like you're playing with fire. I know you wanted to try whatever, but it was just very, very dumb. It's all that's tread on the tires for what the Lions how the way they play. So I'm taking Minnesota. I think this would be the win that I think would actually make me start to really, really worry about the Vikings a little bit because this whole time I felt like not super worried. But if they're able to go on the road and put together a performance, obviously it'll depend how it look. But if like their defense, for example, does a really good job at slowing down the Lions' offense, it'll make me definitely hesitate a little bit, like, "Oh, shit," like, that might be something serious. It reminds me a lot of the 2017 Vikings, in a way where the defense was better then, but the offense is much better now. But it's the same sort of vibe where you have your journeyman-ish type quarterback that has some resurgence out of nowhere. You have a good defense, you have weaponry on offense, and it all combines into some beautiful season. And like the offense, Jefferson's better than
How old do
Diggs.
you think Sam Darnold is, Michael?
I know he's not old. My point is that it's a guy that has had virtually no NFL success having a random really, really good season that in his eyes is going to parlay into a rest of a good career. Obviously, Keenum was more of like a here's this vet, but the similarities are there. Yeah, Jefferson and Addison, they're both better than what Diggs and Thielen were. James Cook, sorry, Jesus, Aaron Jones is significantly better than what was it, Latavius Murray in Minnesota in 2017. The defense, though, the Vikings had a lot more star power and a lot more firepower in 2017 than it does now. But with Brian Fleur and like the coaching staff, I think now is significantly better than 2017. Mike Zimmer and whatever the OC that they were rolling out in 2017 does not come close to Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores. So it's similar. I do think this team overall is better. But I get similar vibes, and with a better offense, perhaps that is enough to kind of get them to where they wish they went in 2017. We will see. I'm taking the Vikings though to get their 1 seed tomorrow.
All right. Well, that's it for the show, everybody.
You're
Thank you.
taking Detroit, you said?
I am taking Detroit laying
Okay.
3. I would not be surprised if we see the you mentioned like the league making rigging calls. They do not want the NFC to go through Minnesota. I'm telling
Yeah.
you that right now. They want it to be Detroit because that's the team that was ordained from the start of the season in the NFC. It's not the Eagles,
Hmm.
not Minnesota. Um, Here's the thing too, dude. Like with especially with like Goff, like Jared
Hmm.
Goff, the two biggest games of his life were the Super Bowl against the Patriots, where he pooped himself on,
Hmm.
and then last year when they were beating the Niners for the entire first half, and then gave up a massive comeback. Where do you think this game would rank in like Goff's most important games he's played?
Where would I rank Goff? Oh, where I rank this game in the most important? Um, I mean, this is well, like he played in playoff games. Uh, like last year. This is probably the most important regular season game of his life, but, played in a Super Bowl, played in multiple conference championships, you know. He's played in big games before. This stage shouldn't be too big for him, and, like, it won't be, but
I just say that from the perspective that like this is a huge game, and I have his playoff stats, and this feels like a playoff game in a way, right?
Mhm.
8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, Quarterback rating though of 88.4, not QBR,
It's
just quarterback.
he's been very pedestrian in playoff games.
I don't. You know what? I feel like this might be like his like.
Breakout big game.
Something's got to give, dude. If he throws like 5 picks tomorrow and they lose to the Vikings, like you just said, they got to go to Tampa or
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think if they lose, he's not
LA,
throwing
coming off
5 picks,
like
but
him playing
no, I
like
hear you.
garbage.
Yeah. Well, all right, everybody.
Everybody, that's our that's our New Year's show. Thank you,
Yep.
everybody. Take care.
We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.